Wake up your mind. Fill up your day. Oink, oink, oink. Smart little bites that brighten your way. You're listening to Food for Thought Radio here at FFTradio.com. Food for Thought Radio here at FFTradio.com.
Yes, good evening. It's everybody's favourite weekday evening once again. Welcome to Food for Thought Radio. This is the Farmers and Finance segment. I'm your host, Gary Glendale, and I'm in the studio today with producer Paul, producing like Billy O, as I'm sure. Are you there, Paul?
Yes, I'm producing like Billy O, absolutely, and I'm sweating like Billy O, and I'm boiling like Billy O, and I'm all clammy and claggy like Billy O. How are you? Are you having a fun time, Bill?
I'm the same, mate. But you know, it's a bank holiday, so even though I'm sweating in my own little homemade studio now, I was actually very relaxed and chilled out. You know, drinking iced orange juice and all that outside earlier today. It was lovely.
Oh, very nice.
In fact, I might even, because I'm feeling rather farmerish, you know, I'll go and get myself some cider later on.
Oh, well, that would be wise.
Yeah, it would. You know, because it always makes me think of, you know, farmers producing freshly pressed cider, you know, for our pleasure. Like organic cider, it'd be beautiful. You know, and this is the kind of like the more products that we need children to pay attention to, because they at the moment it's all highly processed food like Mackie D's and KFC. You know, their advertisers saying, "Oh yeah, you know, get a burger and fries with your jab and all that kind of stuff." You know, oh lovely, lovely, lovely. But you know, they don't tell you what to, even though they have flavorings and in them. But this is the sort of world we're living in at the moment. Did you ever used to watch Jamie Oliver when he went to America and he was trying to encourage the kids in the American schools to eat their vegetables and be healthy?
I've caught some of it, but I don't remember that particular episode. Why, was that lots of fun? Did he have a bit of a challenge on his hands, did he?
So he was trying to get the kids away from eating chicken nuggets, right? And because they, you know, the school that they were in was feeding them pizza for breakfast. Like, can you imagine pizza for breakfast? And he even said to the the female sort of chef in their kitchen, it was like, look, you're a chef. Like, how did we get to serving kids pizza for breakfast? You know, how did we get here? You know, and again, she was just following policy and all that kind of stuff. But Jamie Oliver was like sort of like trying to cook the food in front of the kids and say, look, you know, this is what you should be eating, blah, 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 blah. And this is what you shouldn't be eating. And what he got a chicken carcass. So there was literally hardly any, meat on this chicken. And this, you know, it looked pretty disgusting, to be honest. You know, and he showed it to the kids and he goes, look at this. And he put this thing in a blender, ground it up, fried the sort of chicken nuggets in it, and then said to the kids, here, do you want to eat them? Like, knowing what they were made of, thinking they would be like, oh my God, that's disgusting, we don't want to eat it. And all of them went straight for it. And his face was an absolute picture. He was just like, I cannot believe that kids don't even eat. That should be a natural instinct to see what's happened and gone, you know what, I don't want to eat that. And they didn't have it. It almost like been bred out of them, for want of a better word.
I think it's a sort of an intergenerational step down of consciousness about food. So this probably began with TV dinners in the 50s. in the States.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you start off with that. You've got husbands coming home, then the wife's starting to go to work in the 60s. So it's all a bit falling apart on the home front. It's not that warm sort of hearth at the end of the day type thing.
Yeah.
People are speeding up. There's all piles of television to laugh at all night long. TV dinners come in. Mum needs to cook something quick because she's fagged out from working down the Hoover factory or wherever she's been.
Yep.
Blah, 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 blah. Latchkey kids. On it goes, on it goes. You need something quick. Everything's about speed and convenience. And slowly but surely, that good aspect of connecting over the family meal table, which is something that I did enjoy as a child. We used to sit down every night of the week, Monday to Sunday, and talk around the table from about the age of 5 when I first started talking. Maybe I started a bit earlier than that. I don't know. Right through to being 20, 23, 24 when I left. So that's the way it was. And it's great, actually. Right, come down, your tea's ready, all that kind of stuff. But that's where it's come from. It's obviously the disintegration of the family unit has led to that. So it's even these children going for this pulpified Kentucky fried, devastation or whatever the hell it was called. That's because their parents are not clued up. They've got no scanning equipment left. They've got no defense mechanism. The parents going, oh, it's quick. That's good. We've got to get to work.
Yeah.
Or something
and
similar.
The parents haven't really got too much to say either. I think that's the main thing because, parents can generally just get stressed out with the kids. If the kids don't know what the parents have been up to and the parents don't know what the kids have been up to, it just seems like you're prying into each other's private lives because you haven't actually got a bond with them anymore. And then, conversation is forced, and then the kids are just like, well, I've got much more exciting things to do on my phone. There's lights flashing and sounds popping off and... and all my other friends are playing this game. I've got to get the high score and blah, 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 blah. And you know what they say? They say, I didn't actually realize, how they say a blood is thicker than water? Yeah, so in other words, family ties are actually meant to be deeper than friendship. I didn't actually realize that they've actually got it wrong. That's not the complete sentence. The complete sentence is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Right.
No.
So I'll explain it. So the blood of the covenant means the blood that has been shed in battle. So in other words, the relationships you have with your comrades, like your friends, the people that you have adventure with, the people that you have something in common with, you have a greater bond with than those in your family that you have nothing to do with, because it's just the water of the womb. Just because they're your family doesn't mean that you're actually connected to them in any way. That's why a lot of people drift away from the family, but they find that they have stronger bonds with their friends.
That's one way of. Yeah, it's one way. I've got a slightly different. Just having heard it, I'm thinking slightly differently actually, or in addition to what you've said. Which is the blood of the covenant. So a covenant's a contract, and bloodlines are to do with races. So the way I heard it, as you said it, is that the contract of the race is stronger. It overrides your loyalty, as it were, to your family, because I'm like that. That's how I heard it, right?
Maybe. I would say it's more. Well, I mean, personally, I would say it's just to do with like friendship bonds. You develop a stronger
Could be,
bond.
but I mean, the thing about friendships is, and I sound like a right miserable git, I suppose. People, when you're younger, you have your mate. I don't know what it's like these days because I'm not young anymore. But as a younger person, I had all the friends I made at infant school. From 5 till 7. Then I had another bunch from 7 to 11. Many of those went on with me, or I went on with them to high school or grammar school, whatever it was, from 11 to 18. And then after 18, I still retained a big bunch of those guys that, we just hung around and did things. And then I came to London. But the thing is that people come in and out of your life as friends like a rotating door. And you think they're never going to leave it, particularly when you're 16 and you're thick as thick and you've had a lot of experiences running away from bullies and stuff like laughing your socks off. All those sorts of crazy things, the little things that happen to you as a kid or as young people. So I think it's to do, I think a great part of all of this, all the way down to the disgusting chicken nugget puke, is that it's another aspect of the erosion of the family unit. Every single thing that we talk about is an erosion of the family. It's such that people don't even think about families anymore. There aren't any TV programs, for example, that even in an indirect way praise and uphold the strength and quality of families. In fact, families have been verbally and culturally abused in the mainstream for 40, 50, 60 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And yet without them, there is literally no civilization. They are the high tide watermark. I know people don't think this, but I know it. No families, no civilization. All you've got now is a robot camp. This is not civilization that we're living in. You can't have it.
Yeah, I do kind of get that, but you're sort of thinking about COVID and all that. Like I've had to find myself a completely new set of people to hang around with that share the same values as me, that don't like being experimented on, and literally do their due diligence, and literally aren't, what's the word? So lapsadaisical, or what's the other word?
Disinterested.
Well, I would say, there's a particular word when you're just like, you know what, I'm going to look into this before I let somebody inject me with anything that I don't know about.
Obstreperous.
It could be poison that they're injecting me with. I better do some research on this.
Skepticism, are you thinking about? Is that the word?
Along
Maybe
those lines, it was more. I think the word I'll probably remember it as the show goes on. It's in my hippocampus somewhere. But
that's a great line. Yeah. Hang on, just a minute. It's in my hippocampus somewhere. Just wait. It'll be long in a minute. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I used to use it all the time actually during COVID, because it was divided between those who were jabbed and those who were not. And those who are not were just like, I'm not going to be as irresponsible and reckless, really. Just going to, irresponsible is probably the better word. Yeah, I'm literally just going to be so irresponsible to just literally let somebody inject me with something that I have no idea or research what it's about. I'm just going to believe everything that I've told. That's reckless and irresponsible. And I was just like, I cannot hang around with people who are like that. I was absolutely outraged by it. In a shocked, outraged kind of way. To the point where I was like, I can't believe you're just going to go down and let somebody that you don't know inject something into you that you know nothing about. This is opening the door for just a whole world of recklessness and irresponsibleness, because that's what they are. I mean, even taking their kids down. Or have you actually looked into what they want to inject into your kids? I was just like, I cannot be around people like that. You become who you hang around with and all that. I
agree. I think, you're right as well. I mean, not that I don't think we had I think somebody in my family probably went along with it. But that was about it. My brother didn't, for very sensible reasons. And he's not necessarily beating down the same paths of inquiry as people like you and myself and others are. But he had enough common sense to know that you don't trust the government with anything, to be quite honest, and you don't need these things. And it's what's missing, I think we talked about a few weeks ago, is the question mark in people's lives. They don't even recognise it anymore. They don't, because they've been denied permission to ask it without getting abuse and demeaned in front of the rest of the class for being, stop asking pointless questions. There's no such thing as a pointless question. There's no such thing as a bad question. It doesn't exist. Because as long as you allow them to be asked, they upgrade the questions automatically in real time very quickly. As long as they're answered truthfully and they're asked honourably. But see, it's all been shut down. So the whole idea that you as an independent could become an independent thinker, a lot of people have given up on that, unfortunately.
Well, I actually heard there was a post on YouTube the other day where there was a girl who was just talking about a quote from a college professor who was lecturing, and he said he just noticed that when the internet came along, rather than asking him questions about the information he was giving his students started giving information about what they'd learned from Google, thinking that they knew it all because they'd done a 5-minute sort of Google search. And she was saying that she was saying they didn't make you stupid. They made you confident on purpose, because confident people can be easily manipulated because they haven't got the knowledge there. All they've got is this confidence that they feel as though they know something because somebody told them something, and that's it.
Yes.
So they're talking with confidence, but stupidly, not knowing that they're stupid because they've got too much confidence in themselves.
Well, these are the people that have ended up running the world, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but
They're so stupid that they don't get that they're stupid. And you're right, the confidence
all
thing.
by design, though. All by design.
Well, I guess. I mean, there've always been people like that. It's a bit like you're out in a pub, right, one night, I remember, and people would get up and start singing really loudly, and that you could tell from the look on their face that they actually thought they were good at this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
In other words, the idea of self-criticism in some people just doesn't exist. And I know people who are sort of, and will tell you things with such confidence and sort of veracity in the sound of their voice, you're almost taking them for a split second and you realise they're talking horseshit. Because they've bought their own image of themselves, and I know what and so they've adopted the theatrical body language and tones and eye movements of somebody who's in charge, you see. Yeah. The fact is that many of them are Burks. Yeah. And you cannot, this is the big worry, I think, you can't go to those people and communicate that to them. I mean, you could. The words could come out of your mouth, but they're not going anywhere. Yeah. That's what we faced with the whole COVID compliance thing. People had made their mind up. The government had said, we're right, and you're a maniac. Okay, well, this isn't really much wriggle room for discussion, does it? In fact, zero. And that's part of it, really.
Yeah, I would say spot on there. But this kind of leads me on to this point about, ignorance and lack of knowledge and not knowing. And this leads on to economics and money, obviously, which is what this entire segment is about. And I've been trying to explain to people what economic incentive is, because I thought, how can I explain what's going to happen in the future? And I said to people, look, people will unite due to economic incentive. And I was just like, oh, that's pretty plain and simple. People will get that. But they didn't really understand what I was saying. And, I was just like, how can you not understand what I'm saying? Like, what do I need to, how can I express this even more simpler than that? And I actually came up with a way, and I think it's this. So when you have a negative toxic economy because the medium of exchange is being inflated and therefore is becoming more abundant, and then there's more of the supply available than to purchase goods and services than there are goods and services. So the value of the goods and services, the market value, would appear to increase as the abundance of the medium of exchange starts to be inflated. So therefore it's the goods and services that have the appearance of being more scarce than the medium of exchange, because the medium of exchange cannot be destructible. It can't be consumable. It can't disintegrate. So therefore, if it's effectively permanent and you just simply add more to it, the stockpile just keeps going up and up and up and up. Whereas most goods, almost all goods, are eventually consumable in some way. They need to be replaced or upgraded or something like that. So
they wear out.
Yeah, exactly, and all of that. So I was just like, maybe, I thought, let's try and explain this in another way. So I said, in an economy where you have an inflationary medium of exchange that inflates forever and therefore becomes more abundant and the value of it goes down, when that goes down, the cost of goods and services appear to go up. And if you're a small business, unless you can somehow increase your prices in line with inflation or somehow cut or reduce your overheads, you're constantly fighting an uphill battle to stay profitable and in business. And eventually you will succumb by being either taken into receivership by the bank, or an expansionist competitor that can take advantage of economies of scale will take you over and turn you into a branch of their own operations to make profits from. So in that scenario, in that economy, you are sinking permanently until you are drowned and sunk. Whereas if you have another economy where the medium of exchange is fixed in supply and divisible rather than inflated, as it gets divided, it becomes more and more valuable and more scarce. And therefore its value goes up in comparison to the cost of goods and services in the economy. And so therefore people actually start to reduce the costs of their goods and services to try and get more of this medium of exchange that's increasing in value sooner rather than later, because the quicker they can get it, if the supply is fixed, then they've got something that is truly scarce. And over time, when you pay with that item that's fixed in supply, you're giving away the entire lifetime's value of that asset for the market price today of the item that you're purchasing. And so when everybody is in that economy where the medium of exchange is increasing in value, those people who go across are obviously going to benefit from it the most, but then they find that they can survive and thrive, and they can start expanding their own businesses. They can start new businesses on top of the businesses that they've already got, because the old businesses that they've got will continue to survive and thrive as the asset that they've received for the medium of exchange actually increases in value. So then when other people are just like, oh, hold on a minute, my business is sinking over here, so if I go over there, my business is actually going to survive, because the cost of my overheads actually starts to reduce, and the value in my pocket actually starts to increase. So therefore, I can sustain this indefinitely, for a longer period of time. Right, I'll come over as well, and then eventually, everybody in that economy is using this same medium of exchange. And they're just like, look, we don't actually have your economically toxic medium of exchange anymore, so therefore we can't buy your products from you, but we will pay for it with this item that's increasing in value, because we've accrued more purchasing power with it, and therefore if you want us to buy your product, you're going to have to accept this, because this is what we want to spend, not your toxic soup shit. So therefore that is going to suck all those who are resistant to initially going into the economy. It's going to suck them into it via the forces of the natural economic forces of supply and demand, where everybody in that economy starts to benefit. So that's what I'm trying to explain, is like, you've got a toxic one here and a beneficial one over here. And as more and more people start to realize the benefits, eventually they're going to suck everybody over. And that's what I'm saying. People will unite due to economic incentive, and then when they're in that economy using an asset that is increasing in value because it's fixed in supply, doesn't have any central point of authority or control, and therefore can't be manipulated, therefore those who were manipulating the previous system and inflating the currency supply, and enriching themselves at the expense of others, well, suddenly they're going to be forced to come over. And they then won't have the economic power that they had previously to create economic power from nothing, because nobody's accepting it anymore. So then you have a worldwide consensus of people saying, we don't want to be part of that toxic economy. We're going to be in this economy, which runs on a fixed hard protocol with an asset that's divisible, where people use and want data integrity. They want to track supply chains. They want to make sure there's no crime, or theft going on in their businesses. They want to be more efficient. And that's what I mean by people will unite due to economic incentive. They will all come together to agree to be in an economy that benefits absolutely everybody, where negative actions can be stamped out. Because in the Bitcoin economy, where everything is permanent, things can be traced. But because it's a single ledger, and there's going to be so much activity on there, literally what people do in their private lives, will be of no bother to anybody, because it's not causing any harm, injury, or loss. However, criminal activity that is having a detrimental effect on everyone, that's when everybody will be interested. So I actually said, in an economy like the Bitcoin economy, nobody will be interested in what anybody does in their private lives. They'll only be interested in that criminal activities that affects everybody, in their public lives. So it shines a light on criminal activity, and it's going to be easier to stamp it out.
Yes, I think they will. I mean, the role of newspapers and so-called economic textbooks in upholding the perception that we currently have of what the so-called banking and money, but actual currency system is considerable, and it's going to be weird watching that unravel. in whatever way, shape, or form. In other words, you're saying that we're not. You won't be interested in anybody's transactions. Well, how could you possibly even begin to take interest in them? I mean, there's going to be so many. There's going to be so many. I need to know what Mr. Smith of Bolton was buying at 10:30 last night. No, you wouldn't. The question's not even going to arise. I mean, it can't. It's a bit like saying, look, we've got all these books in this library. There's 1 million books. If you read them all, you'll know everything. We ain't got time. So forget that. It's not happening. It's that kind of thing. So that the scale of it is so vast that it's a kind of idiot thought to think that somebody could contain it all in their head. Why would they do that? Or that they would just sit around analysing it. The emphasis, I think, will go elsewhere. And it makes you think about, if you think about the news stories that are pushed to effectively hoover in people's attention, all of it, inadvertently, indirectly, and sometimes directly, is to uphold and maintain the game as it currently exists. There's a game. And of course, we were not invited to write the rule set, and this is why we end up not doing very well at the game, because most of us are not taught, A, how it's played, B, whether it's worth playing at all, which it isn't, and who's in charge of all the monopoly money, because that's all it is. And you might get £200 when you pass go, but it all depends on what your blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So, the whole world's a drama when you think about it. It's a massive drama. All the newspapers sell on negative news, don't they? No newspaper that ever talked about good things that ever made it.
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith's just made a lovely apple pie down there. Oh, it's fantastic, and everybody loves it. Yeah, I can't wait to read more about that. No, we're drawn, as it were, like moths to a flame. Ooh, what terrible thing has happened?
Well, what's good about that is that when you actually have a media like that, you can actually track and trace that crime, and it's permanent. And there's nothing that the criminals can do about it. And you can prove whether or not the newspaper is being true or false, because you can track the evidence. In fact, I found the quote that I said. I said, on a system like the Bitcoin network, people will not be interested in what others do in their private lives. They will only be interested in criminal activity that is having a detrimental effect on everyone's lives.
Yes.
So that's the comparison. So when you've actually got newspapers who like to bring attention to drama and criminal activity that's taking place, well, that's actually going to help. So whereas at the moment all they're doing is just building and breeding fear in society because nobody can actually do anything about it, because those at the top are corrupt and nobody's really got the evidence trail and it's all hearsay. Whereas now they're just like, if somebody says something, you can actually prove it. And therefore therefore justice will be served. It's massive. So
I think it's going to throw up. Just listen. And I know you've mentioned it before, but you think about that sort of situation maturing. It's a process, right, or a journey, and it will become more detailed and more mature as time ticks by, whatever time might be. I could see people getting unhinged in strange ways. In that, whether we know it or not, we've all been kind of indoctrinated into the drama culture. It's part of your life, right?
Yeah,
it's just part of mine. It's just been unavoidable. What's on the news? What if all that stuff just stopped? Do you think people would go mad out of boredom? I know it's a ridiculous thing to say. I have no idea what to anticipate. I just think it's a bit like Stockholm Syndrome. We're all in it to a greater or lesser degree. People effectively line up behind the most powerful forces in their life, because they think it's the least worst decision that they can make, and they end up becoming subservient to authority figures because of it. And then they pretend to themselves that they're not and that they're free, because it's too painful to question the fact that they're actually lending their support to a bunch of thugs. Now, if you take all that away, I don't know what happens to all the Stockholm Syndrome people. Maybe they go berserk and go, no, I want all the bad people back so I can support them. But you're not a bad person. It doesn't matter. This is what I've got used to. Listen, I'm talking out my bum.
No, you're spot on there. Yeah. In fact, I've written about that in my book. About why people go back to treading on eggshells again. Again, it's all trauma based, because if you're with somebody who is abusing you, and then people work to sort of get you away from them, when you eventually escape the abusive relationship, it's then that all the traumatic memories start coming back to haunt you.
Yes.
Cortisol floods the brain, which eventually turns the brain, creates a suicidal state of mind. And then the individual starts to think, well, actually, I wasn't suicidal when I was with my abuser. Maybe I'll go back to them. But the reason they weren't suicidal when they were with their abuser is because they had to use their hippocampus to tread on eggshells around the abuser to make sure that they didn't get hit or thumped or abused or anything like that. And so the stimulation of the hippocampus was keeping the cortisol at bay. And so that's why they end up going back there, because of the stimulation of the hippocampus to keep the cortisol at bay when they actually were suicidal when they left them. But I tell you what's going to happen in the Bitcoin world, which I think is going to be fascinating and I'm looking forward to, is that when people start realizing, hold on a minute, how come I'm so better off in this new economy because I'm being paid in an asset that's actually increasing in value. I therefore have more purchasing power. This means actually I'm more financially free. This means I can actually do what I want. And when I do what I want, I don't like being told what to do and what not to do in my private lives. Like, how many really wealthy people do you know that like being told what to do? I don't know any, mate, because they're free. They're like, who are you to tell me what to do? Am I doing anything that's bothering you? No right. Well, you've got no right to tell me what to do then. Do one. And that's what's going to happen. Literally, people are going to start turning around to the government and say, who do you think you are? You're public servants. Get back in your box. And that's what I said. We here have a real opportunity to say to them, so the reason you're feeling this way and now you're feeling abundant is because they've been asset stripping you your entire life. And did you know, by the way, they're now trying to strip away your constitutional rights? Oh my God, are they? Yes. And this is how they're doing it. This is what we need to do to combat it. So you need to start learning the Constitution. If there's no victim, there's no crime. If there's no claimant, there's no claim. If there's no contract, there's no obligation. So when somebody says you've committed an offence, well, who's the victim? Who's the claimant? Where's the contract? Is there one at all? So is this individual there who won't give you his name, who's accused you of committing an offence, if they won't tell you who they are and they're trying to make a claim against you, well, a claim doesn't exist. That means what they're actually trying to do is deceive you into thinking that you've actually done something wrong when you've caused no harm, injury or loss. It's all deception. I think people are going to start waking up, mate. But this is why I think it's the farmers are the people who I'm most concerned about at the moment, because food security is absolutely essential for the continuation of a sovereign nation. And also we obviously know that they want to make people fat and stupid and dumb, and you are what you eat in many ways. They don't want farmers producing healthy food and people going to farm shops and eating organic. They want highly processed and ultra processed food with sugary shit and all that kind of crap. So that's why I would say I think if first.
Absolutely, as we've said, we are here to support the peasant farmer union, or whatever you want to call it. I hate union, but the peasants have got to get with the farmers. The farmers have got to get together with the peasants, and we've got to make hay while the sun shines and all sorts of other terrible phrases, right? But the bad guys, do farmers. They farm us. They're not farmers. They farm us. We are on their tax farm, aren't we? We're on their human resource farm. The whole of the management of the Industrial Revolution devolved down to turning public education systems into literate and numerate pupils. Why? Because you needed them in that condition to be able to operate the machinery of the new commercial age. And I'm not saying that was all bad. However, you can see that these things are thought through at a very large scale, many decades possibly before they're actually implemented, about how things are going to change and what they're going to do. And I think possibly in the early days of that sort of thinking, the intentions, just like with so many other things, are good. But what happens is it builds up its own culture of control in due course. On day one, there isn't a Department of Trade and Industry, but after about 50 years, there is. And suddenly, what occurs is that the culture inside these departments becomes the addictive thing. It's the thrill, or whatever word you want to use, of being in these spaces, and people lose sight of the purpose of these institutions. The purpose then becomes, I've got a god job in here, I'm getting a good 6-figure salary every year, and I'm keeping it. And then it becomes about internal politics. Then people actually indirectly betray the very cause that the department was set up for. And you can apply that to everything. And it just seems to occur in human affairs. And it's probably because, in great part, if you are an independent thinker or seeking to become one or doing your damnedest to be one intermittently, whatever level you're at, you end up with a series of goals that you want to expand all that. Life grows. I mean, things are either getting bigger or getting smaller. Nothing stays still. Everybody goes, oh, I'm ticking up. No, it's not. It's either incrementally getting smaller or incrementally getting bigger, but it ain't standing still. Nothing does, which is much to the chagrin of all of us. Can't you just leave it be? Well, life will not leave anything be. It's just changing. And I think part of the challenge here, or it seems to me maybe one of the sort of hidden ground rules around here, is one of the games that we're involved with, rightly, because we've been designed that way, is the game of ever-expanding consciousness, which sounds a bit grandiose and sort of not the sort of thing that you'd say down the pub. But basically, most of us want to know more and with greater clarity with each passing day if you're armed with a question mark. You just do. Why? Because if you apply that knowledge, you can improve the quality of your life in all sorts of ways, physically, spiritually, intellectually, relationship-wise, whatever it is, put in structures that defend what you've built. So, I mean, it seems to me that that's just a written rule of all life. That's what we're looking to do. You can defend yourself better if we're now fully conscious of the true machinations of the so-called banking system, right? Which we are, or we're certainly there's probably bits that we're missing, but they're not going to change the main narrative that's now known from inquirers. Then you're in a totally different space to people that don't know that. And you can say that for any area, I think. Obviously there are people that know a great deal about health and they look at what you put in your mouth, like chicken nuggets, and they want to die. Don't do that. But if you as an individual have not pursued a sort of line of knowledge down that, you can't even hear what they're saying. And that's what I'm saying. It is about communication, not just the words that come out, but what you're saying to whom and when and in what kind of tones. It's so subtle. It really is. But I do think, the good thing is that birds of a feather do flock together. And you've probably, just like we were talking about friends, through your life, you're in little groups, aren't you, in clusters, and they're fantastic. And they all have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They seem to. No one wants to think about the end, and nobody even knows why it happened. But it just does. People drift apart. They get different goals. They go, well, I'm 28 now, and I don't think like I did when I was 12. Good. It'd be a bit weird if you did. And it turns out that I actually don't want to hang around here forever. I actually want to go and study Eskimos for 20 years. So that's what I'm off to do. So you won't see me for a bit. Oh, can't I go to the pub with you anymore? Nope. It's over for a bit. And this is what happens. But then, that just seems normal. I'm probably talking silly stuff, but you get the idea. It does happen. And I think when you're younger, it's more threatening when those things happen because, you're not so strong financially. You are absolutely buzzing with energy physically, of course. And I do remember that great line that, what is it? Youth is wasted on the young.
Oh,
and
was that
it's
Paul
true.
McCartney or something like that?
I don't know. I think it's a line from It's a Wonderful Life. You know that film with Jimmy Stewart? You ever seen it?
Yeah. Great movie.
Absolutely fantastic. When he's out taking her out and he's going to lasso the moon for her there, and he goes, he said, why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death? It's such a great line. I just love it. And I'm going, I want to live there. I want to live in Bedford Falls. Every time I see that film, I go, that's where I want to live. I like that. Right. And Jimmy Stewart in that film, we did quite a few shows about it. I'll probably do another one because I think good movies like that, and there aren't many these days. It's got a moral story. It's wonderful. It's got a great heart. It's got the most enormous challenge. His hippocampus was not doing so well. He had a massive cortisol injection towards the end, and understandably so. He's looking at complete ruin of everything he's spent his entire life on, down to something that he didn't even do, and your heart goes out to him. It's the most wonderful story. It's not the only wonderful story, but it is a wonderful story, and it always bears good repeat watching. I'll watch it every few. I found a colour version actually at Christmas, but I haven't watched it. But I don't watch it all the time. Maybe every 8 or 10 years, I'll give it a run through because it's so good. But anyway, sorry, I whittled on about films there, but I think it kind of illustrates the point, and none of those things have been presented to our people. I mean, in that film, they get together all the time, don't they, around the table? They eat and they talk and they do things. They have breakfast together and things are going on. You don't see films like that. Everybody's too busy shooting spies or whatever it is. It's just crap. You just go, is that it? Can we have enough? I've had enough now of the shooting films and all that kind of stuff and the dramatic music and people making these incredible monologues in the darkness are full of doom. It's like, oh, bugger off. Twat. That's how I feel about it. I ain't got time for this. And when I go and watch modern films, not that I do, so I don't know why I said that. I haven't been in the cinema for donkey's years, but when you see them, I know there's something seriously going on with me because all the good guys, I want them dead inside 20 minutes. They're such smart arses and tedious bores. They don't have any problems, do they? They're just, they're always in a massive chase. So I'm pretty hard to please with all that kind of stuff. I want low-key films that are funny about real human beings, particularly English, Scots, Welsh, Northern Irish, and Irish people. That's what I want. I want stuff about us. I'm interested about, the people I live cheek by jowl with. I think there's loads of great stories, but they're just, again, they're not given time on the stage. We have to watch this other pap. Although Hollywood, I think, is slowly dying for whatever reason, thankfully.
I get what you're saying. What's interesting about that movie, The Wonderful Life. I suspect that the bad guy in that movie who wants to introduce gambling and alcoholic bars and probably like lead into strip clubs and all this kind of stuff. And that owns the bank. I can't help but think he might be a particular type of person. Wanting to introduce those vices into what was, a lovely neighborhood, to basically try and strip away all the family values of it, for profit
Potter.
and all that kind of stuff.
Potter he's called, isn't he? Mr. Potter. That's his name.
Yeah. So he definitely had an agenda, which we generally sort of like recognize today. But I think it all stems from the fact that, people say it's an old movie, but the financial system actually isn't all that old. It's the same as it has been for, I would say, almost like 1,000 years.
It's not
but
old.
initially people were using, silver. Well, obviously corn initially, then silver, then gold. But it's there's always been the bankers, like the merchant of Venice wanting his half a pound of flesh. Yeah, that was it. Was it pound of flesh? Yeah, that's right.
It was. Can't have the blood though.
Lending,
but they managed to find a way.
Tokens,
yeah.
Whereas really,
there's some fantastic scenes in that movie. There's some really good ones. There's the run on the bank when they're about to go on their honeymoon. The run on the bank, and he has to get it. He has to get till 12 o'clock or whatever it is, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they end up with $2, $2 single dollar. That's all they've got left, and he's shelled out his entire honeymoon budget to keep everybody from going berserk. Crowd psychology, all that kind of stuff, and. Some of the things that we talked about here are just summed up. This is the way to pitch these ideas, by the way, is to get them into sort of an infotainment space. And I don't think the film's meant to be preachy. It's just it addresses, I think, what were massive issues for people because they'd just come out of the Depression of the 30s. So there were runs on banks and everything was going completely tits up in America and here as well and everywhere. By design, of course, as you well know. And Potter symbolises that. There's a bit where he's confronting him, I think, at a boardroom meeting. He said, I know what's galling you. He said, you've got all these houses out here and you want to get your hands on them. And that's all. That's really all it comes down to. And why do you want all this stuff, Mr. Potter? I don't know. I never really thought about it. I think we need to send you a psychiatrist. You're mad, mate. You don't need to. You don't even need it. You can't even use it. What do you need all this stuff for? Do you think there should be limits on stuff? I mean, I sound like a communist now, don't I? You go, no, people should be able to just go and go and go and go. What, really? I mean, there are people out here homeless and stuff. Is that wise? I don't know. I mean, I hate the idea of forced socialism, which is what it always ends up being. In essence, all of these ideas are pretty good. And you talk about, it's not capitalism into free enterprise, a different kettle of fish. So that's what we're into. We're saying, you can do your stuff. But it's got to be within the constraints of the law. It does. With no law, you don't even know whether you're free or not. You've got to have it. What are you telling me what to do? No, nature is going to kick our ass if we... Look at history. What's that? Yeah, okay, we've got a big problem. You need to look at history and see what's going on. And there's nothing new with what's going on. We've just got an amazing opportunity to be involved in the latest high-tech version of the overthrow of Western civilization. But there is nothing new with it. It's the same old principles that there's crews of people want to get their hands on all the levers of control. Unfortunately, to a great degree, they've been able to do that. They've subverted the cultures in these departments, in the civil service, in the Bank of England, which is not a Bank of England at all. It's a bank on England. Actually, it's not even that. It's in the city. And all that kind of stuff, and they mangled the words brilliantly because they hire all the best linguists from Oxford and Cambridge and suck them into their space, turn them into barristers, and they write, 10,000-page treaties on this, that, and the other. And if you don't know it, their club says you're for the high jump, lad. All this kind of stuff. It's a complete scam, really. And it's dishonourable, and it has no heart or goodness in it. I know I sound like a sentimental fool saying this, but at times, actually, I am a sentimental fool, and I quite like it. And I think naivety is a great informer as well. Sometimes to just be fresh-faced about a thing, it's rather a wonderful feeling. It's a bit like when you're sort of 7 or 8 and someone gets you your first ice cream and you can't believe it. Loads of ice cream salesmen today, by the way. I've just been walking up and down. I went out for a walk for an hour and 45 minutes today, and I thought, I can't sit around in this sun, so I waited until it got a bit cooler. I do sound like an Englishman today. And I went for a walk up and down, and I counted 8 ice cream vans over about a mile. They're going hammer and tongs. They're never there, but the whole place is just flooded with people taking their clothes off and eating ice cream. I don't mean all their clothes. I just mean, in a state of some disrobement because it was so hot. Right. Should have been selling ice creams today.
Well, that sort of a sensation, that forgot the word you just used there. When you were sort of reminiscing about the old times, I think those times are actually going to come back. I think people's creativity and intentions and realize. I think there's going to be a mass awakening when people suddenly realize, because this lot have got away with what they're doing because they've been doing it undercover. They've been doing it via subversion. They invert, subvert, and pervert absolutely everything. And someone messaged me earlier today when they were asking me about Bitcoin, and I was giving them the usual rhetoric. And they were like, oh, well, that's exactly what they've been saying about CBDCs. And I was just like, oh, my God. So literally what they do, they will take the rhetoric that works, and then they will apply that rhetoric to their own scammy ideas because people don't know the difference. Yes. They take advantage of people's ignorance.
Yeah, they do.
And good nature.
They do. So you could, if we kind of flip that around, the lesson is for people to begin the process, including me, because it's a never-ending one, of removing your fields of ignorance. That's the job at hand. And that can only be done by an individual that gets it. And one of the ways to get it is to have a pain. I'm sorry, it's just awful. But it's true. The hard lessons are the ones that you actually really do learn from. They're life-changing. You go, holy crap. And suddenly you can feel your entire sort of worldview getting rewired in the moment. When you hit these things, these big, filthy lies that you're just sauntering along through life and everything's great. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have a mortgage. And then you find out what a mortgage is. And you go, what? And then you dig a bit deeper. And then you go, oh, I'm a bit cross about this. And then you find other people that are cross. And you find that you're very cross. And when an Englishman gets very cross, it's like DEFCON 3. And I think we're just mildly cross at the moment. We're still pretty serious, but we've got to get very cross. And so that's kind of where we're pushing. But I think there are really good signs. I do think there are good signs. I think the restoration of some form of truthful Christianism, or whatever word you want to call it, is required because you need a moral and ethical framework to provide guidance to the young. And it also gives the parents a framework with which to guide their young. You can't just say, what we're going to do is we bring our children up. We're going to eat pizzas for breakfast and just watch TV and rush around and look at smartphones. Okay, this isn't going to turn out well. Because you're just producing a lot of people that basically have never learned how to think deep enough. They think to the level and depth of a puddle of spit, and it's not good enough. It won't work. It won't wash.
Yeah. Well, I would I would say that this. How you were saying when an Englishman gets angry. Well, what about a Yorkshireman? What about Yorkshireman when he gets angry?
They have egg and chips, I think, according to Robin Hood and stuff like that. There's look, it's not just a Yorkshire thing. I think it's all over England. It's just if it's cushed it, if your life has been really comfortable, you'll be the last one to find out.
Well, yeah, and also,
unfortunately, on the other side as well, people that are really under the cosh, they're going to be unfortunately the same group because they've been under such pressure physically throughout their life, right? And probably therefore surrounded by other people also under extremely excessive fiscal pressure, or whatever you want to call it, that they've developed a different and often, unfortunately, a violent sort of attitude. And those people have been cultivated by our leaders to occupy the roles in the armed forces whenever they've wanted to do it. It's not by accident. It just isn't. The hoovering of all the people into the cities over the 17 and 1800s produced an underclass. That became extremely guileful and vicious, and they weren't all pleasant. Let's put it that way, right? They were not pleasant. It's what Dickens wrote about. You take people off the land, a bucolic existence that worked. I mean, I had a thing the other day. There was a guy talking about, we talk about merry old England. One of the things always worth repeating is people only worked about 24 weeks a year, 26 weeks.
Really?
The rest of it they had off. Oh, yeah. And they didn't work all day either. They used to take a 2-hour break for lunch and do all sorts of stuff. There had plenty of food. It all worked. Because it's in keeping with the rhythms of all of this stuff. That's what merry old England was. Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. And they call it the Dark Ages, our would-be dictators, because it was dark for them. They couldn't practice usury. If you issued a mortgage in England, I think it's up to about 1508 or early 1500s, you'd get hung, drawn and quartered. You get killed for it. Couldn't do it. Because that's when the church still had some moral and ethical backbone. Of course, it's the Catholic Church at the time before Henry sort of, went completely, well, it's not that it was perfect. But as I said, there's a great book. I don't know if I have mentioned it here before. There's a great guy called William Cobbett. You'd love Cobbett. Seriously, he's one of us. He's in the bloodline because he got locked up for opposing the Bank of England's move away from gold, right? He just fought. He was absolutely sensational guy. Early 1800s.
Okay.
Right, and you think, 200 years old, I won't be able to read that. You will. It's unbelievably brilliantly written. It's like the Sun newspaper of its day. That means it's very intelligent, right? But it's really easy to grasp. So he wrote a whole thing about the gold standard, I think, and they just really... As soon as I found out that he'd been whacked for that, I thought, top guy. Those are the guys you look for, right? The ones that have been at a bit like Dr. Wright, okay? Yeah. Same sort of thing. The ones that are getting it in the neck, those are the ones you always look at. The ones that are demonized, you go to them and have a look. Why is he getting demonized? Or she? What's going on? And he wrote a book called, he said it's not the, what's it called? My mind's gone blank. What did Henry, when they overthrew the church, what is it called? My brain's just stopped. It's jarred. Not the revolution, the
Reformation?
The Reformation. Good grief, look at that. Brain's gone wonky. It's too much heat in the head. And he said, it's not a reformation. This is Cobbett. He said, Cobbett writes at the beginning, he goes, I'm raising the Church of England. This is not an anti-Catholic tirade, right? He said, this is a tirade basically against the whole thing. He said, they call it the Reformation. He said, it should be more accurately termed the devastation. And when he starts to go through what was going on in England, it makes you weep, mate. Oh, right. It's like COVID, but on steroids. Yeah. People had been lifelong friends. 3 weeks later were killing one another. No way. All because of this division. Yeah, horrific. And Henry thought he'd get away with it, but he was, and this is the beginning of mercantilism under Henry. They ripped all the stuff off the church's roofs, and we morphed into the camp of the enemy during this period. This is what needs to be understood. And then we've got the East India Company, world's first corporation, gets formed in 1600, just before or during Elizabeth I, his daughter. Right. The oldest corporation in the world, and no time has any other corporation ever been as big. I'm not saying it's big now, but in terms of its percentage control of things, it was off the charts. Oh, yeah. And that was done with advisors from Holland, not really Dutch people either. It's the same thing, right? So this has been a bastion. Unfortunately, our island has been used, or particularly the city of London, has been used as a main HQ for the shit that we see in the world, unfortunatally. It's just true.
Well,
it's just the way
also,
it is.
yeah, just one thing I wanted to add on to that was, Epictetus. We went through some quotes that he said the other
Epictetus. Epictetus.
There we go. Epictetus, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really good as well. I'm glad you brought that up because I remember Ed Griffin quoting it years ago. But I thought it's also a really good name considering that we're talking about farming because it's about epictators, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really big potatoes. Sorry, that's just the way I think about things. So So anyway, epictators. Yeah. Yes,
so
that thing.
In his quote where he said, "You cannot teach a man that he thinks he already knows." So in other words, yes. Like when a guy thinks he knows, you cannot teach him anything about it because he thinks he already knows it. And he's formed his opinion on it. And there was a really smart guy actually who was being interviewed recently who went up to help Rupert in Makersfield, did an epic talk about what was going on and highlighted all the problems and all that. And I was just like,
the guy in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get him on the show. So I had 3 people send me that, going, Paul, get him on the show.
I've been in contact with him if you want.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it off air after this. Right. Yeah, briefly. Yeah, let's, because I'd love to. It's just, I went, oh, Englishman, right, ticks every box. Let's go. And many of the things he was saying about Restore, exactly my sentiments as well. I'm not a political animal. It's just that we're surrounded by political animals, and we've got to find a way of defending ourselves.
Well, I got in contact with him because it was the answer that he gave was obviously well thought out, and I was just like, "Wow, this guy actually knows his stuff." But
he does
in the interview. Well, he knows his stuff, but it's very easy to point out problems. It's very easy to point out problems, and all it was is he's followed the problem and tracked it, and it's just like, okay, well, so you obviously know the problem, and you've got the intellectual capacity to regurgitate it, but what solutions have you got? And I was just like, look, I've sent in the article that I'd written that's being presented to Liz Truss next month. Got a private audience with her, so because she's at least looking for solutions. And I thought, here's an intelligent guy that I might want to give this to. And literally the moment I mentioned Bitcoin, it literally from saying, I'm free all day tomorrow and the next day and for the rest of the week, just like give me a call whenever. Suddenly I got a message saying, sorry mate, I'm busy, I've got some work to do. And I was like, oh my god, literally it stank of this expression, you cannot teach a man that which he thinks he already knows. I was gutted.
But to give him his due, right? All of us, in relation to one topic or another, are in the same situation, right? I just think we are. One of the things about Bitcoin is that word. We got to come up with a good word for the BSV version. We can't. Every time the word Bitcoin is used, unfortunately, the trigger goes exactly where you don't want it to go. It's not a useful word for us at the moment. I don't think it is. I'm just thinking as well, FFS for this show, Farmers Finance Show, it really should be Farmers Finance Solutions for a while, shouldn't it? That's what we're interested in. Don't you think?
Yeah, right. We'll have to speak to everybody next week about that.
We will. See you all next week, everyone.
All right.
Hey guys, all you truth seekers out there, the Weekend Truth Festival is back for its third
This is
year
Mark,
on the 17th
the bowler
and
hat
20th
farmer,
of July
here at Food
at the
for
beautiful
Thought
Lay
Radio.
Farm Church